They didn't look at me like a daughter. They looked at me like an obstacle to be removed. I should have known something was wrong when my mother showed up to my grandmother's funeral in Chanel instead of black. She spent the entire service checking her phone while my father networked with cousins we hadn't seen in 15 years. Me? I sat in the front pew trying not to completely fall apart because Grandma Elena was the only person in my family who ever loved me without conditions. My name is Sofia Martinez, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a social worker in San Diego, making barely enough to cover rent and student loans. My parents are Patricia and Robert Martinez, both senior executives at a financial firm downtown. Growing up, they had one plan for my life: law school, corporate track, marriage to someone appropriate. When I told them at 23 that I wanted to help people instead of corporations, my mother actually laughed. When I refused to change my major, they cut me off completely. That was 9 years ago. 9 years of silence, except for awkward encounters at family events where they'd introduce me as their daughter who works with children like I ran a daycare, instead of helping families escape domestic violence. But Grandma Elena? She never stopped calling. Never stopped inviting me over for Sunday dinners. Never stopped slipping me 20s and telling me she was proud of the woman I'd become. She was my mother's mother, but somehow, she understood me better than her own daughter ever did. The will reading was 3 days after the funeral. I almost didn't go. The lawyer's office was in one of those glass towers downtown where my parents worked, the kind of place where I felt like security would ask for my ID just to use the bathroom. But Elena's attorney, a kind older man named Mr. Peterson, had specifically requested my presence. I took the bus because my car was in the shop. My parents pulled up in their Tesla as I was walking from the stop, and I watched my mother's lip curl when she saw me in my Target dress. Mr. Peterson's office was exactly what you'd expect: mahogany and leather and walls of legal books nobody had probably touched in years. My parents sat in the 2 chairs across from his desk. There was a third chair, but my father had put his briefcase on it. I stood. "Sophia, Mr. Peterson said warmly, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for coming." "Please, Robert, if you wouldn't mind." My father moved his briefcase like it physically pained him. The will reading itself was mostly boring legal language about accounts and possessions, small bequests to charities Elena had supported. Then Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "To my granddaughter, Sofia Martinez, I leave the entirety of my investment portfolio, currently valued at approximately $800,000, as well as my home in La Jolla, to be held in trust for her use or sale as she sees fit." The silence in that room could have shattered glass. My mother was the first to find her voice. "That's impossible. I assure you, Patricia, the will is quite clear." My mother wasn't in her right mind. My mother's voice got that edge it always had when things didn't go her way, sharp enough to cut. She was 82 years old. She had memory problems. Someone obviously influenced her. She was looking directly at me when she said it. "Mrs. Martinez, I can assure you that Elena was evaluated by 2 independent physicians and found to be of completely sound mind when—" "We're contesting this." My father stood up, already pulling out his phone. "This is clearly undue influence." Sophia isolated her, manipulated her. I visited her. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. I visited her. We cooked together. We talked. "You want money for student loans, don't you?" My mother's smile was poison. "That's what this was about. You saw an opportunity and you took advantage of a vulnerable old woman." Mr. Peterson tried to intervene, but my parents were already walking out. At the door, my father turned back. "You'll hear from our attorney, Sophia. Enjoy your money while you can." The door closed. I stood there shaking, Mr. Peterson's hand on my shoulder, and I realized with complete certainty that they were going to take this from me. Not because they needed the money they made more in a year than most people saw in a lifetime, but because they couldn't stand that their disappointing daughter got something they wanted. The lawsuit came 2 weeks later. My parents were claiming elder abuse, undue influence, and mental incompetence. They'd hired Dennis Harrington, one of the most expensive probate attorneys in San Diego. The retainer alone was probably more than I made in 6 months. I called every lawyer I could find. The consultations were all the same. "This is a strong case, Miss Martinez. We'd be happy to represent you. The retainer is $5,000. I had $800 in my checking account. I spent 3 weeks in the library researching California probate law. I watched YouTube videos on courtroom procedure. I made binders of evidence, photos of me and Elena together over the years, birthday cards she'd sent, recipes we'd cooked. I had text messages, emails, voicemails. But would it be enough against a team of lawyers? The hearing was set for a cold Tuesday in January. I dressed in the one suit I owned, the same one I'd worn to job interviews fresh out of grad school. It was starting to look dated. I took 2 buses to the courthouse, my binder of evidence hugged against my chest like a shield. San Diego County Superior Court was intimidating even from the outside, all concrete and authority. Inside was worse. The hallways echoed. Everyone seemed to know where they were going except me. I found the right courtroom. My parents were already there, sitting with Dennis Harrington at the plaintiff's table. My mother wore pearls. My father was checking his Rolex. Dennis had one of those signet rings lawyers wear to remind you they went to a good school. I sat at the defendant's table alone with my target binder. The bailiff called us to order. Judge Sarah Williams entered, a stern-looking woman in her 50s who didn't smile as she reviewed the case file. "Miss Martinez," she said, looking at me over her reading glasses. "I see you don't have counsel listed. Will an attorney be joining us?" "No, Your Honor. I'm representing myself." Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes looked almost sympathetic. "You understand that you're at a significant disadvantage in a proceeding like this?" "I understand, Your Honor, but I can't afford an attorney, and I won't let my grandmother's wishes be disrespected." "Very well. Mr. Harrington, you may present your case." What followed was 45 minutes of professional character assassination. Dennis was smooth. I'll give him that. He presented bank records showing I'd visited Elena more frequently in the last year of her life. He had a handwriting expert ready to testify that the signature on one of the codicils showed possible stress or coercion. He even had a psychologist who'd never met my grandmother, prepared to say that someone her age might have been vulnerable to manipulation. Then came my parents' testimony. My mother took the stand in her Oscar de la Renta suit and cried, actual tears running down her face as she told the judge how heartbroken she was. "My mother and I were so close," she said, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. "We spoke every week. This has devastated me, knowing someone took advantage of her love. I wanted to scream. They'd visited Elena maybe twice a year, always when they wanted something, usually money." My father's testimony was worse. He sat up straight, looked the judge right in the eye, and lied with perfect conviction. "We only want what's fair, Your Honor. What's best for the family. My mother worked hard for that money. It should stay in the family that cared for her." Dennis rested their case with a practiced, sympathetic look at the judge. "Your Honor, this is a simple case of elder abuse masked as affection. My clients only want justice for their late mother." Then it was my turn. I presented my evidence with shaking hands, photos of Elena and me baking in her kitchen, going to farmers markets, sitting on her porch watching the sunset. I showed the judge birthday cards she'd sent me every year since I was born. I read emails where she told me how proud she was of my work, helping families. She wasn't confused, I told the judge, my voice cracking. She beat me at chess 2 weeks before she died. She quoted poetry. She told me stories about growing up in Mexico that she'd never told anyone else. She was the sharpest person I've ever known. Dennis cross-examined me like a prosecutor going after a criminal. "Isn't it true, Miss Martinez, that you had significant student loan debt?" "Yes, and isn't it true that you stood to inherit a substantial sum upon your grandmother's death?" "That's not why. Please answer yes or no. You stood to inherit money. That's motive, isn't it?" "Objection, Your Honor." My voice was louder than I expected. "That's not a proper question. It's argumentative." Judge Williams looked almost impressed. Sustained. Rephrase, "Mr. Harrington." But the damage was done. I could see it in the judge's face, doubt creeping in. What did a social worker making $38,000 a year want with $800,000? Wasn't the answer obvious? By the time we broke for recess, I was fighting back tears. I went to the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. My suit was wrinkled. I had bags under my eyes from not sleeping. I looked exactly like what my parents' lawyer was painting me as: desperate, grasping, willing to do anything for money. I splashed water on my face and went back. The courtroom was already filling up again. My parents sat with Dennis, whispering confidently. I sat alone at my table, trying to arrange my binder into something that looked professional instead of pathetic. Judge Williams returned to the bench. "I've reviewed the evidence presented by both parties. Before I issue my ruling, does either side have anything to add?" Dennis started to stand. "Your Honor, we would like to call our psychological expert to..." The courtroom door opened. A man walked in, tall and lean in a perfectly tailored black suit. He moved with purpose, carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my rent. He had graying hair, kind eyes, and an air of quiet authority that made everyone in the room turn to look. "Your Honor," he said, his voice carrying. "My sincere apologies for the interruption. My name is Michael Chen. I'm a trust attorney, representing the estate of Elena Rodriguez." Judge Williams frowned. "Mr. Chen, this proceeding is already underway. If you had evidence to present." "I was instructed by Miss Rodriguez to wait 90 days post-mortem before presenting this material, Your Honor. I apologize for the timing, but I have critical evidence regarding Miss Rodriguez's testamentary capacity and intent." My parents' faces had gone pale. Dennis Harrington's practiced calm was slipping. Michael approached the bench and handed the judge a sealed envelope. "This contains a video testament recorded by Elena Rodriguez 6 months before her death, in the presence of 2 physicians and 3 witnesses. It directly addresses the claims made in this proceeding." Judge Williams opened the envelope and examined the contents. "This appears to be properly authenticated. Mr. Harrington, do you object to this evidence?" Dennis whispered frantically with my parents. "Your Honor, we had no notice of this evidence. The video was sealed under Miss Rodriguez's specific instructions and only to be opened in the event of a contest to her will." "You contested the will, Mr. Harrington. I'm going to allow it." The bailiff set up a screen. The lights dimmed slightly. And then there was my grandmother, sitting in what looked like a lawyer's office, wearing her favorite purple cardigan. The date stamp in the corner read the 15th of June, 2024, 6 months before she died. "My name is Elena Maria Rodriguez," she said to the camera, her voice strong and clear. "I am 82 years old. Today's date is June 15th, 2024, and I am making this recording in the presence of my attorney, Michael Chen, as well as Dr. Sarah Park and Dr. James Morrison, who have both examined me and confirmed I am of sound mind and body." She folded her hands in her lap, and when she spoke again, her voice was gentle but firm. "I'm making this video because I know my daughter, Patricia, and her husband, Robert, will contest my will. They've never been able to accept when things don't go their way. And the truth is, they're not going to like what I've decided to do with my estate. I'm leaving everything to my granddaughter, Sophia. Not because she asked for it, not because she manipulated me, but because she earned it through 10 years of unconditional love. Patricia will tell you we were close. She'll probably cry in court. But let me tell you the truth. My daughter calls me maybe 6 times a year, usually when she needs something. In the past decade, she's asked me for money 12 times, $240,000 total. I gave it to her every time, hoping it would bring us closer. It never did. She never paid it back. Never even sent a thank you card. Sophia is different. She visits me every Sunday, not because she wants something. She comes because she loves me. We cook together. She learned to make my mother's tamales, something Patricia never cared to learn. We watch old movies. We sit on the porch and talk about life. She brings me flowers from her garden. She listens to my stories even though she's heard them 100 times before. When I had pneumonia last year, Patricia sent a card. Sophia took 2 weeks off work without pay to stay with me. She slept on my couch, made me soup, read to me when I couldn't sleep. That's love. That's what family is supposed to be. So, Patricia, Robert, if you're watching this in some courtroom, trying to take away what rightfully belongs to Sophia, know this. I see you. I've always seen you. You never loved me. You loved what I could do for you. Sophia loves me for who I am. She made my last years joyful. She gave me a reason to wake up every Sunday. She reminded me what it means to have a family. I'm leaving her $800,000 because she deserves it. Not for taking care of me, I never asked her to. But because she did it anyway. Because she has dreams of going back to school, of opening a community center to help families like the ones she works with. Because she's good and kind, and the world needs more people like her. Mr. Chen has instructions. If my will is contested, there's a no contest clause. Patricia and Robert will receive nothing, not 1 penny. Because if they can't respect my final wishes, they don't deserve any part of what I've built. Sophia, Mija, if you're watching this, don't let them bully you. This money is yours. Use it for your dreams. Make the world a little bit better, the way you made my life better. I'm so proud of you. I love you. And even though I won't be there to see it, I know you're going to do amazing things. The video ended. The screen went dark. I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Across the aisle, my mother sat frozen, her face a mask of shock and humiliation. My father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Dennis Harrington was gathering papers with shaking hands. Judge Williams cleared her throat. When she spoke, her voice was harder than it had been before. Mr. Harrington, having reviewed this video testament, which clearly demonstrates Miss Rodriguez's mental competency and explicit intent, do you wish to continue this proceeding? Dennis leaned over to whisper with my parents. The conversation was brief and heated. My father's face was red. My mother looked like she might be sick. Finally, Dennis stood. Your Honor, in light of this new evidence, my clients wish to withdraw their petition. Motion to dismiss granted. Judge Williams looked at my parents with something like disgust. Furthermore, given the clarity of Miss Rodriguez's wishes and the frivolous nature of these claims, I'm sanctioning the plaintiff's $25,000 for bringing false accusations of elder abuse. That money will be paid directly to the San Diego Elder Justice Coalition. She turned to me. Miss Martinez, the estate is yours, free and clear. I'm sorry you had to endure this process. Your grandmother clearly loved you very much, and she was absolutely right about your character. Thank you, Your Honor. My voice came out as a whisper. And thank you, Grandma. I looked up at the ceiling, like maybe she could hear me. The bailiff called the next case. I gathered my binder with shaking hands. Michael Chen approached my table. Miss Martinez, your grandmother was very specific in her instructions. She anticipated all of this. She was a remarkable woman. She was the best person I've ever known. She left something else for you. In my briefcase, he smiled. Letters. One for every year until you turn 50. She wanted to make sure she could still give you advice, even after she was gone. I started crying all over again. Outside the courthouse, my parents were walking to their car. My mother saw me and took a step forward, mouth opening. Sophia, wait. Don't. My voice was stronger than I expected. Grandma said everything that needed to be said in there. You had a choice. You could have loved her. You could have loved me. You chose money instead. And you didn't even get that. I walked away. For the first time in my life, I walked away from them without guilt, without wondering if I was the problem, without hoping they might change. Michael drove me back to my apartment. The whole way, I kept thinking about what Elena had said, about dreams, about making the world better. 6 months later, I'm sitting on a bench outside the Elena Rodriguez Community Center. It's in the neighborhood where I grew up, the one my parents moved away from as soon as they could afford to. We offer free counseling, legal aid, job training, and a food pantry. The waiting room is always full. The phones never stop ringing. I used half the inheritance to buy the building and fund operations for 5 years. The other half is in trust, growing, ensuring this place will be here long after I'm gone. I quit my job at the county and hired 3 of my former colleagues. We're making a real difference. On the wall in the main lobby, there's a photo of Elena in her purple cardigan, smiling that smile I'll never forget. The plaque beneath it reads, Elena Maria Rodriguez, where everyone has family. I think about my parents sometimes. I heard through cousins that they had to sell their boat to pay the sanction, that Dennis Harrington dropped them as clients, that they're not invited to as many charity galas anymore. I don't feel sorry for them, but I do feel grateful, because their greed taught me something important. Family isn't who you're born to. It's who shows up. It's who loves you when you have nothing to offer but yourself. It's the person who saves you a seat, who listens to your stories, who believes in your dreams even when you've forgotten them yourself. My grandmother showed up for me for 32 years, and now, through this center, I get to show up for other people the way she showed up for me. I think she'd be proud of that. I know she is.